Hello, welcome to Malayalam FM 104.6 and you're watching or listening to Malayalam FM's new segment, No English, No English. My name is Roji Varghese and I will be your host. First of all, let me acknowledge why I'm speaking in English. I realize that Malayalam FM is a radio channel to celebrate everything that is Malayalam. But we have now become global citizens. And therefore, this particular segment is our way of tackling the English language. So, permit me or allow me to be part of this wonderful discussion or take you through this linguistic or language journey. Let me first tell you the purpose of this program. You may have a penchant with grammar, or you may love long words and be a sesquipedalian, which means a person who loves long words. Or simply, you want to listen to this program as you hurkle-durkle in your bed, which simply means you like to laze around. It doesn't matter. All I want you to do is try to listen and enjoy as I take you again into a wonderful world of language. The format of this program is very simple. We discuss a topic. I'll give you a short rant, and then we have our ardent listeners or watchers asking me a few questions about our topic for the day, and I'll try to answer them the best way I can. Let's begin. Today's topic is on Indianisms, linguistic chutnification or colonial hangover. Why are you doing time pass? Kindly revert back after you complete the same. The mellifluous music of Indian English, resonant, unapologetically inventive, and let's admit, utterly baffling to the uninitiated. These Indianisms, the lexical flotsam and the syntactic jetsam, left in the wake of colonial English, serve as a vibrant cultural subtext, a linguistic bridge that connects the subcontinent's cognitive map to the Queen's, no, now King's English. Yet for decades, they have been dismissed as errors rather than expressions, awkward misfits rather than linguistic artifacts, worthy of preservation. But, hold that disdain. Should a phrase be sentenced to exile simply because the British didn't stamp their approval on it? Nay, these peculiar Indo-lexical nuggets offer unexpected strategic advantages, particularly in areas of public speaking, global communication, high-stakes proficiency tests like the obvious ones, IELTS PTE or OET. Yet, let us approach this linguistic phenomenon with nuance, acknowledging that while delightful and culturally resonant, unchecked use of Indianisms can sometimes bewilder international audiences. Remember, effective communication demands balance and awareness. The beauty of Indianisms isn't merely their quirkiness, but their psychosocial ingenuity. Consider the phrase, do one thing, ostensibly a gentle request, yet a subtle assertion of authority. It's a verbal Trojan horse, offering the illusion of choice while firmly directing action. Imagine its strategic use in public speaking. Do one thing, and just pause for a moment, and consider the power language that holds to shape and thought. Notice the impact when I use it. It subtly commands attention, injecting authority while maintaining courtesy. A potent rhetorical device in debates and extempore speech competitions. Now let's go to the global English proficiency tests. Now, they penalize linguistic idiosyncrasies, yet paradoxically reward contextual nuance and pragmatic fluency. Now here lies the secret for the skilled Indian English speaker. It's called strategic subtlety. Take the oft-maligned kindly revert. While IELTS standards prefer please get back to me, the term revert carries subliminal urgency, suggesting a subtle obligation, compelling quicker response. My tip is to use Indianisms subtly, immediately pairing them with their internationally recognized equivalents. Now, this approach showcases linguistic flexibility, satisfying examiners' criteria for fluency and adaptability. Now, if I were to use the Wildean wit of Indian English, Oscar Wilde, the Grand Master of acerbic eloquence, he would have appreciated Indianisms, the paradoxical humour. Let's look at one of them. You are coming, or what? The perfect expression for existential impatience. He is a foreign return, as if customs declaration gained sentience. I have a doubt, elevating a fleeting uncertainty into existential importance. Strategically placed, these expressions can serve as an engaging comedic device which Russell Peter has cleverly used, but not during spoken English assessments. A very timely, "you are telling me?" with nuanced delivery can elevate an ordinary interaction into a memorable dialogue. However, please remember, moderation is key. Recognize contexts where clarity outweighs charm. English itself is a language built on linguistic appropriation, from Latin to Sanskrit. So why then deny linguistic citizenship to Indianisms? Consider the word loot, originally from Hindi, smuggled into English lexicons via the British Raj, or the logical brilliance of the word prepone, the natural opposite of postpone, which native speakers now are increasingly adopting informally. To Indianisms or not to Indianisms, unregulated use of Indianisms in formal contexts without awareness risks confusion. But calibrated precisely, these phrases transform into conversation accelerators, cultural signatures, and rhetorical assets. For those who are IELTS PTE or OET aspirants, the goal isn't blind conformity, but linguistic alchemy, understanding precisely when to replace, retain, or strategically deploy Indianisms. So, the next time when someone sniggers at your Indian English, kindly revert with a smirk, because, dear listener, you possess a linguistic superpower. And that has been my erudite rant on this particular topic. Let's move on to our questions.
Hello, my name is Atulya Mohandas and I'm calling from Auckland. I have both a comment and a question to share today. So we as Indians, we do have our own dialect, our own way of speaking, accent. I'm not talking about any of these today, but we tend to think in our mother tongue first in our heads. And when we express in words, that is exactly what sometimes comes out. So for an example, in Malayalam, we sometimes, we say, "Njan avidathane undayirunnu." And when we speak in English, it sometimes comes out as, "I was there only," instead of "I was right there." So that is one comment I need to share. And the question I have is, when you don't hear someone, when they speak to you or when they say something to you, you don't really hear what they said, and you need to ask them to repeat it. So you either say, "Sorry," "apology," "pardon," or you ask, "Come back again." So which of this is the right or the polite way of asking the person to repeat what he or she had said?
Now, when you heard Athulia speak, she did use a sentence, "I was there only." The position of the word "only" is at the end of the sentence, which is a very common Indianism. Right or wrong, it's not very common with English speakers. They tend to use the word "only" in the middle of a sentence. If I had to be a grammarian, "only" is used as an adverb or an adjective. For example, think of the sentence, "I only love her," and "I love only her." The meaning changes there. But we never say, "I love her only." When I say never, I said it's an Indianism. So, just to be aware about it, try to use "only" in the middle of a sentence. The second one is the use of the word "come back again." Now, the reason I give a smirk is because we do say sorry and pardon, and that's good enough. But the word "come again" or "come back again" is sort of redundant, isn't it? Come back and again. The word "come again" also has a lot of other meanings. For example, it has sexual innuendos, and I do not want to get there, number one. Number two, it also means, if we use the word "come back," it sounds like a witty retort. So I would prefer that you avoid it completely and use the word "sorry" and "pardon" if you would like the person to repeat that information again. So there you go, Athilia. Thank you for your question. And those are the two parts or the two aspects which I suppose you have asked. The next question is, I believe it's from Kevin, if I'm not wrong. And he has asked me, which is a very popular question, I believe Shashi Tharoor did talk about it in one of his very short interviews, is the translation of the word etramate.
ഹലോ, എൻ്റെ പേര് കെവിൻ. ഞാൻ കിങ്സ്ലൻഡിൽ നിന്നാണ് വിളിക്കുന്നത്. എൻ്റെ ഡൗട്ട് എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, മലയാളത്തിൽ നമ്മൾ എത്രാമത്തെ എന്ന വാക്കിന് ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ എന്ത് വേർഡാണ് ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നത്?
Now, when we translate Malayalam to English, what we forget to do most of the time is that we do not think about the context in which we use it. No two languages can be completely the same if you don't understand the context. Now, for example, there is a Malayalam word called thembi. There is no English equivalent for that word. So what do we do in English when we find a word in Malayalam and we do want to use it in English is to understand the context where we can use it. So let's go back to etramate. Imagine you are renting a car and your car is in slot 39 and it's in the 9th row. So obviously you would go to the person and say, you wouldn't say, where is my car? If you did, it's easy. Where is my car? Or you would say, which row is my car in? Of obviously giving him or her the option to give you the number. Also, the very popular example. In the line of prime ministers, what number is? And you would obviously tell the name of the person. Now, that's the way of asking the question of etramate prime minister aanu. So, there you go, the translation. Please do remember, English as a language has borrowed words from so many other languages. But sometimes one language isn't enough. Let's look at the word Schadenfreude. It's a German word that means a person who takes pleasure in another person's pain. We don't have such a word in English. I don't believe we have such a word in Malayalam either. So we have to borrow words from other language because I don't think any single language can have a word for all the emotions that we experience. Just another one, I'm just throwing another word out there, is petrichor, which means the smell of grass. Again, I don't think there's a word in Malayalam for that. So, I would say, try not to spend your time finding an equivalent word. Whereas spend your time looking at the context and see how well you can talk or deliver or describe that context. Please remember, clarity is much better than charm. Another fascinating one is Isabella, who's asked me, how do I get to know when to use, or when pronouncing a word, what sound is silent?
My name is Isabella and I'm from Mount Wellington, Auckland. So my question is that I have always been confused about silent and non-silent letters. How do you know when a letter is supposed to be silent or not? Like the letter H in the word honest or the letter K in the word knowledge. Both the letters are silent. So I only knew these because I was taught that way. But I am asking whether there is any trick or rule to figuring it out on my own.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you, Isabella, we have to just learn it. Fortunately, if you go online, I believe that there is the IPA, which is the International Phonetic. It allows you to understand the pronunciation. Now, you have to choose between the British and the American pronunciation, and that is there online. I'm sorry that there is no other way. But I'm sure with high-frequency words like knife, you would obviously get to know that. My way of learning a word is obviously I would look at its pronunciation online and I would see if there's a difference between the American and the British one. For example, very recently when I was doing a talk on very long words, and I did that in my introduction. The word sesquipedalian means a person who loves long words. And one such long word is pulchritudinously. Now, obviously, we don't use these kind of words. Pulchritudinously is simply a word to do something beautifully. Now, why would I use such a long word? But the idea is when you practice your diction, your pronunciation, what happens is that there is clarity in your speech, and that will always be appreciated. So go online, just go to dictionary.com or go to the British Dictionary, Cambridge, or the American Webster's if you prefer American, and you can figure that out and try to repeat the word as you get in there, because they will tell it to you. All right, thank you. Now, Jeffy has come with another question here. Now, Jeffy's also a very close acquaintance of mine, and he's talked about two Indianisms. What's your good name and what is your native place? Now, there is a lot of history behind, not a lot of history, there are varied history behind the phrase good name, because good name can also mean reputation. I have a good name in this particular area, which means you have a reputation. Also, the word good is connected to the Bible or the Christian religion. When somebody does ask you what's your good name, today it's like asking you what is your official name. There was, or there, I don't know there is or not, but there was a tendency for individuals, I believe it's the Catholics or even most Christians, to have a name that they would give it to the church, and they called it the good name. And they had their preferred names, which is what other people would call them. So therefore the idea of good name, the name that is written at church, in church when you're baptized. So therein lies the good name. Today, it's extremely formal to use the word, what is your good name? And I believe also, not very sure about this, in the recent book by Shashi Tharoor, I think it's called Wonderland of Words, he talks about how there is a Bengali expression very similar to good name. Probably, we might have taken it from there too. So the word good name has a lot of etymology. And there's a lot of history when it comes to good name. But today, obviously, we don't use it. We just ask you, what's your name? So that's the first one. The second one is, what is your native place? Instead of asking, where are you from? Native, such a very interesting word. Today, we don't even use the word native English speakers because it's very difficult to define what a native English speaker is. There is nothing right or wrong in that. There's a reason why people used to ask them, what is your native place? And because we, as Malayalis, we tend to travel quite a bit. We are, there and I can put another word now, we are not nomadic. The word for this is we travel because that's where our employment takes us. And therefore the word for that is peripatetic. A peripatetic person is a person who has to travel because of their employment. And that culture in ourselves demands that we ask that question, okay, you've been living here for 14 years, where are you actually from? So therefore the word native place. Like I've been telling it from the beginning of this particular episode, it's not wrong. We are quirky. We like to use Indian English and it's quirky, and I'm sure with a lot more people using it, it definitely becomes common parlance. But if you were going for an interview, if it's in an IELTS or OET or one of those high proficiency English tests, you just say, where are you from? Makes it much easier. The third one that he asked is, I believe, is the difference between shift and move. And that's also quite interesting because it's hard to say what's correct and wrong there. I'm moving house and I'm shifting houses. Technically, the word shift is used when you are moving short distances. For example, I'm shifting my table from one place in my bedroom to another place in the very same bedroom. So I can shift my table. I'm not moving my table. So that's what usually we use the difference between shift and move. It reminds me of another Indianism, kindly adjust. Now, kindly adjust is when you have, let's say, a lot of people sitting in one place, you would like the person to move. Or let's say if you're back home and you have 5 people sitting in a car, you want the 6th person to barge in, you want a little bit of space, you'll just say kindly adjust. Kindly adjust also means it's the Indian way of telling, or it's an Indianism expressing, I'm sorry. That's what kindly adjust means. But It's interesting there, isn't it? Shift and move. Now, what's the correct way of telling it? I would say, yes, I am moving house. If I'm moving to another place, like I said, moving is quite natural to tell. If you're using the word I'm shifting, it simply means that you're moving to a place that's very close in terms of distance. And that's the idea there. Thank you, Jeffy, for your questions.
നമസ്കാരം, എൻ്റെ പേര് മഞ്ജു. ഞാൻ ഓക്ലൻഡിൽ നിന്നാണ് സംസാരിക്കുന്നത്. More than a question, this is to share a funny anecdote that taught me something about today's theme of Indianism. അപ്പം ഞാനിത് ഈ വായിച്ച ഉടനെ ഞാൻ ഓർത്ത കാര്യം, the word prepone. നമ്മൾ വളരെ കോമൺ ആയിട്ട് ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ this happened maybe around 26 odd years ago when I was new to New Zealand workspace. അപ്പോൾ ഇതുപോലെ എന്തോ ഒരു മീറ്റിങ്ങിൻ്റെ കാര്യം ആ സമയം സൗകര്യമില്ല എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ my boss said, oh, we might have to postpone it to another day, or the other option is, അപ്പം ഞാൻ വേഗം വലിയ enthusiastic അല്ല, oh, we could prepone the meeting. അപ്പോൾ Patrick looked at me really like in an he gave me an odd look, and then he kind of ഇങ്ങനെ നെറ്റിയൊക്കെ ചുളിച്ചിങ്ങനെ നോക്കിയിട്ട്, and then he got it, and then he smiled and he said, oh, that's a fantastic word you have created. അപ്പം ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു, ഞാൻ ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്തൊന്നുമല്ല, we use it very regularly, I mean quite commonly in India. അപ്പോഴാണ് ഞാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കണേ അത് ഇവിടെ ഉപയോഗിക്കുകയില്ല അങ്ങനത്തെ ഒരു വാക്കപ്പോൾ ഇൻസ്റ്റെഡ് നമ്മൾ ഇവിടെ പറയണത് the meeting was brought forward എന്ന് പറയും, അല്ലാതെ നമ്മൾ പ്രീപോൺ എന്ന് പറയില്ല. അപ്പം ഈ തീം കേട്ടപ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് അത് ഇന്ത്യനിസം എന്ന് കേട്ടപ്പോൾ ആദ്യം ഓർമ്മ വന്ന ആ കഥയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ വിചാരിച്ചു അത് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാമെന്ന്. പിന്നെ the title of the program, and such an excellent choice of pun, so well done for that, and all the very best for the show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Manju, for your questions. Now, Manju has used the word prepone. It's another word that Shashi Tharoor has also discussed. Now, this word came out in 1913, a long time ago. Obviously, a lot of people don't know the word prepone, but it's gaining popularity, especially informally. It's better to use bring it forward or advanced. It's easy to use it. But prepone, I personally prefer the use of the word prepone. It's easy. Postpone, prepone. It's quite quirky. It's short. It's fast. And think about it. Prepone. It makes it easy. But obviously, like I said in my introduction, as Malayali, some of us have the penchant for being grammarians. We're so worried about being correct. We want to talk like those who have been indulging in the English language for years. Therefore, the use of the word prepone may not suit that purpose. Advanced, let's advance the dates. Let's bring it forward is also another way to tell the very same idea. Another one, I believe, is I did my studies. Yes. Very, very Indian in that. When you say I did my studies in Auckland. I graduated from Auckland is a better way of telling it, instead of I did my studies. Now, the reason why we focus, and I believe this is just my reasoning and why we focus on I did my studies in, is again that idea of being a global citizen. We want to emphasize the fact that that's the only activity we probably did in that particular place, and we went back home to India or we went to another place. So therefore the emphasis, I did it in Auckland, I did it in America. Therefore segregating that activity alone. But it's better to say I graduated from, and you tell the name of the university or you tell the name of the country. It's better to say that. And the last one is to use the word backside. What's interesting there, isn't it? The word backside. That's true. Again, the word backside reminds me of how the word backside, I believe, comes from a direct translation on veedinte poravasham. I believe that's where it comes from. Now, backside also has I believe there's a very old book called Entry from the Backside. It's not a great book, but it talks about Indian English, and it's a very old book. It's also has the problem. Why it's not the problem. It's a funny way of telling it because it also has quite a bit of sexual innuendos in that, and a lot of people say the backside. That's the funny part of Indian English, is that we make it usable. We take an idea, we appreciate our language so much, and we do our translations. I don't find a problem in that. There is no problem. But the idea of being aware of it, I think that's our accountability, that's our responsibility. So instead of the word backside, obviously, we could say, why didn't you come behind the house? Or there is a door behind. So the word behind can be used if you're talking about a door, or beside, rather than using the word backside. So thank you for your questions there. Now, I have a couple more Indianisms that I would like to talk about. It's because I frequent them quite a bit when I speak to parents and when I speak to some students too. One is the word mugging, very popular for those of us who have, well, obviously gone through formal education. Obviously, the word mugging in English means if somebody would steal or take money from you and threaten violence. But for us, the word mugging is cramming, which means to remember as much as information as possible in a limited time. So, that's wrong English. If you were to use that for PET or any of those proficiency tests, do keep that in mind. A lot of people don't really know that mugging in India actually means to cram information. That's number one. The next one is I have a doubt. Now, the word doubt simply means uncertainty. You're not very sure. It does not really mean a question. So if you want to ask a question, you would say, I would like to ask a question, rather than saying, I have a doubt. Seems incomplete as a sentence. Again, let me tell you this. I've obviously tell it again. We are not going after proper English. We are going after the idea on how to make another person understand what we are thinking. Clarity, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, the next one is, this is quite popular, veg and non-veg. So simple. You've got to give it to us to make these ideas so simple. Non-veg. Well, here we'd say you're a meat eater. Or you're a pescatarian, which means you eat only fish and no other meat. But the use of the word non-veg is our own. Take pride in it. But when you tell somebody else that you are a non-veg, it sounds a bit odd, because what does that mean? That you don't eat vegetables? Well, if you don't, you better check your health. All right, let's move on to the word time pass. In Indian English, or in Indianism, time pass means to waste or while away your time. I think what the person actually wants to say is a pastime, which means something that you do, which is not really a hobby, but you just like doing something in your leisure time. So it's not a time pass, it's a pastime, if that's what you mean. But again, what's wrong with time pass? Let's tell some people, I think using those words, if you read Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things, you will find a lot of Indianisms that are being used. And remember, she won the Pulitzer Prize. So, like I said, it's not about not using. It's not about correct English. It's about where you use it that matters. We have now come to the end of this episode. If you do have comments, if you're an ardent listener, or if you're the person who watches our YouTube page, please do send your comments on to 022 402 3344. Let me repeat that number again, 022 402 3344. Or send in or put in your comments onto our YouTube page. So, go forth, fellow verbal warriors, wield your language wisely, and make your presence felt with the language that you possess. You're watching No English with Roji Varghese. Namaskaram. Thank you.